Welcome to this week's Second Gen's Liberated Panda with me, Angel, and your co-host, Jason.
Today, we're going to discuss the COVID vaccines in China, plus the various issues, uncertainty, and the bureaucracy that's led to the COVID vaccine environment that we're encountering today in the world.
But first, we're going to talk about Dong Jingwei, a person of high interest, that is to say he was dubbed a spy that was rumored to be a high-level Chinese whistleblower that ran away from China. So did he or didn't he defect from China?
Yeah, I've been hearing Chinese social media is buzzing with rumors about him, about Dong Jingwei. And what's going on with this guy? Is he a defector? It seemed kind of quiet.
Yeah, so this is a bizarre story that kind of came out of nowhere, gained a lot of traction, not in mainstream media, but been circulating in the gossip rags and in the Chinese speaking community and on Chinese social media. So the story is supposedly this. So Dong Jingwei, a 57-year-old who is second in command at the Ministry of State Security in China, was said to have defected from China and eventually ended up in America, where he supposedly had secret information he had about COVID-19 coming out of a lab. So essentially, if the story was true, he would have been the highest level defector from China ever.
So what are your thoughts on the rumors?
Okay, so both sides, US and China, are saying this is not true. They're denying it's true. They've said this as of this 24-hour news cycle. So as of today, they've been saying
Right.
both sides. Yeah.
Right. Both sides always deny that. So that's standard regardless of if he is a spy or not. Okay.
Yeah. So let's get all the facts out. I know, Jason, you're dying to jump in with something. And I kind of am too. But this is all going to be a little bit of speculation. But let me just first get the facts out of the way. So the first public clarification out of China appears to be to put to bed rumors that Dong had fled China via Hong Kong as February and handed himself over to the U.S. intelligence officials. So stories about his defection has swirled around conservative websites and Chinese language news outlets in the U.S. in the past week. Reached by Newsweek on Tuesday, the U.S. government officials said that reports about Dong's defection are not accurate. So they didn't elaborate anymore. On the other side. A second U.S. government source, speaking anonymously, also said the rumors were absolutely not true. And the official referenced Dong's apparent participation in another counter-espionage seminar last Friday, hinting that the vice minister of state security was still in China, and there are pictures of him in China.
So your thoughts?
Well, so he was just seen back in China, right? So I have no idea what that's about. This has a air of conspiracy theory into this little story, because it's where does random story come from, right? And why this guy of all people? And I mean, I'm going to have to say, as a lawyer, I believe the U.S. government and the Chinese government when they say that this guy has not defected and is not a spy. And, of course, yes, I believe all of that. But let's speculate, Jason. What do you think? And this is pure speculation now.
Pure speculation. Well, first of all, I don't think he's actually a spy. I have, and I'll give you that in my part two of my answer here. Part one, pure speculation. The American government gave a non-denial denial. They said very run-of-the-mill stuff. You said quoted, absolutely untrue. Quoted, are not accurate. Hearing that, you're just like, okay. Of course you're going to say that, right?
Right.
What do you know and how? The Chinese government, of course, are going to deny it vehemently, right? Hasn't everybody done that whenever they've lost information or anything else, and or had a spy? They always do that. There's a black mark. So neither are giving answers that are kind of proving it to be true. That's kind of my issue with it. Why I think it's really gotten a hold of conspiracy theories here. My second part, though, is that, and maybe there's another conspiracy theory too. Back when the Chinese government rounded up all the American government assets. I think early in the Obama administration, I believe Hillary was still Secretary of State. There was a conspiracy theory that that information was passed to the Chinese government via her servers. Nobody could corroborate that because apparently whoever had her servers probably wasn't giving it up. But we do know that the American agents were rounded up. So the idea that that anybody would think that they would be able to come to America in a Biden administration, who was vice president under Obama when Hillary was Secretary of State, you come to America asking for asylum to give information up and think that he's not going to go back to the Chinese. This guy would know better than anybody how connected the Bidens are to the Chinese. So why would you do that? Why? Like, to me, it's like you're asking to be hung. So you just go up on top of a building and just jump, right? Because you're just begging at that point. So I don't think it's true because you got to be an idiot to do it right now.
Right, exactly. No, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I think this is just like a very bizarre, strange story because it's like, again, why this guy? And the question remains, why is what prompted Biden to go and ask the WHO to reopen the investigation into the origins of COVID, right? So, because like the story goes, this is the whistleblower apparently that prompted Joe Biden to do that like 180 to like look into it. So,
well, actually, during a conference, so with during the G8 summit, a lot of European leaders come out and said that they wanted the U.S. backing to reopen the investigation because something didn't seem right about it. So it actually started from the G8. If you really want to know what I think about it, I feel like this is probably the rumor was started as a cover up because a lot of rumors come in to make people look wacky. And if everybody says, "Oh, COVID didn't start in a lab, the government's not covering it up," or covering up an investigation, that wasn't a real whistleblower, right? They take part number 3 there, right? COVID didn't come from a lab. They're not covering up an investigation. That wasn't a real whistleblower because part 3 was added by people with interest in covering it up. So they attempt to associate the investigation with a rumor or a lie in order to do it. And by doing that, you invalidate the whole thing, even though COVID might have come from a lab. They did suppress the investigation, which we know for a fact they suppressed the investigation. That is 110% valid. They did suppress it early on until it got out in the public after the Fauci testimony, and it got way so far that they had to release, because don't forget, those Fauci emails were not leaked. They were a FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act request. They were allowed out. They were verified. The FOIA requests and various FOIA requests for aliens still haven't been touched in months, in years. There's FOIA requests years back on Area 51 in 1948. So those FOIA requests haven't even been touched yet. We're still waiting on word from the alien stuff. Probably never going to come. But like, that's the thing. The emails were allowed out. And why were the emails allowed out? It's to get ahead of something. What are they trying to get ahead of? So, in my opinion, this is a way for the U.S. government or this administration to get ahead of people saying, "Hey, you suppressed an investigation," or COVID came from China, COVID came from a lab. They're trying to associate this with a crackpot theory, which is false. So everybody kind of goes, 1 + 1 = 2, when really it doesn't. So that's my 2 cents on it. Take it for what it's worth.
Right. So that, again, that's our conjecture. That's just us having fun, just like figuring out what this whole thing is all about, because it's otherwise a completely weird non-starter of a topic, correct?
So yeah, I mean, why do you think? What do you think it is? Like, where, if you had to guess, what's the only connections you could think that why this would have started?
Oh, gosh. I mean, your theory kind of makes sense. My theory is like some person is just so desperate for this COVID lab theory to be true. And one of the people, the groups that are very much against the CCP, I don't know if you've heard of them. They're called Falun Gong.
Of course.
They're like this. They're kind of like a cultish organization. Have you seen Falun Gong? Yeah. Yep. So they're very anti-CCP. They've been for the past, like, as long as I've been in America. I see them marching and protests in streets and whatever. And they own, I believe, they own and run the Epoch Times or Epoch
They do.
Times. And a couple other
And
news
NTD
organs.
News is their media. So if you ever
Right.
get anything with NTD News, that's Epic Times.
Right. I mean, I love their coverage because I don't like the CCP, but I don't like their coverage because I know that it's impartial, it's biased, and it's like not neutral. So if I had to guess, I'm just gonna guess that they made it up as fake news because that like the Epoch and the Falun Gong, that's just how they operate. So that's my theory.
So it's interesting. So and I'm going to ask you questions on this. I'm going to probe you on it since you're a lawyer. So we're going to go kind of the other way around.
Okay.
So in that theory, though, what would they gain from promoting this person? Because everybody's going to know that it's a lie, right? That he never left China. This guy isn't a real person. You name whatever it is, right? They know
Yes.
They know it's going to be all BS.
Okay.
What would the Falun Gong gain from promoting this theory?
Okay, so now we're going up to real gossip territory, right?
Yeah.
So, so based on what we know about the CCP, the Politburo, well, the CCP is the big organism, the big organization, and the Politburo are the 9 people in it, and then you have all these like leaders and whatnot. So they're like very much like the mafia, and I always parallel or make this analogy to the mafia because it's the most accurate one, and it's basically like they're synonymous, basically. So I think the Falun Gong and anyone else that's against the CCP wants to sow discord between the party bosses. You know what I mean? Like sow discord, set in some like put in some untruth, some like make this person look suspicious, make this person seem like I don't know, like someone that they need to get rid of, put him on the radar,
Because he's a threat to the Falun Gong. So naturally, they're going to start a rumor and try to get rid of him. That is a perfect rationale, to be honest.
Either he's a threat to Falun Gong or they're using him as a chess piece to sow further discord within the CCP, where like you're so like paranoid, where you're looking around here like your best friend supposedly, and you're like, wait a second, is this guy like a spy, or is this guy my friend? So that's my theory.
So your basis on it is interesting, because it's much more Chinese centric in your theory that they did it against the CCP. My theory is more centric American, that they're doing it to link these virus theories, right? With just garbage, to try to present it in the media as garbage, because you know how a lot of the media presents stuff.
Yeah.
They'll latch onto it. It'll be on MSNBC. Joe Scarborough will say, well, that's a garbage theory, so obviously if that's all you got for the lab leak, guess that's not true. And that's how it's going to go. It's going to go the way by the Doe Dome. Pretty soon you got a cover up, right? So I think it's interesting because we're both looking at it as political chess pieces on why, but from different angles.
Right, and it's not mutually exclusive, right, Jason? No. Like your theory could be completely accurate, and my theory could be could be completely accurate too.
Honestly, they could have started sowing it in America, and then on top of that, the Falun Gong could have picked up on it and spread it in China.
So the Falun Gong are here in America.
Oh, I mean, they are now, but you know what I mean. They could have picked it up and then spread it via their outlets in the.
They can, yeah.
And sent it out and given it a much bigger, a much bigger platform.
Right? Yeah.
So
no, you're absolutely right.
Doing that, they could have latched onto something. It's honestly, the funny thing is, it's a chicken versus the egg question, right? Which came first?
Exactly.
And they're both probably true.
Right.
Yeah, they're both probably true.
Yeah. So that's us. Playing and hypotheticals and guessing, but Jason actually has real news for us. So he's going to talk about his topic of the day. Jason, go ahead. I know it's about COVID-19.
Yeah, so this week we have a potpourri of just random COVID related data that kind of came out, and it's worth noting in a lot of situations. Last night, Tucker Carlson on Fox News did a piece about censuring about COVID to protect the Wuhan lab online. which is an interesting point. I'm not really going to get into it here, but it is an interesting point, and I know we discuss censoring and stuff like that a lot. So that's a topic I'm sure we're going to roll into other topics. But that was brought up last night that I thought was interesting. There was another scientist, this was reported in the Wall Street Journal the other day, Dr. Jesse Bloom, a scientist affiliated with the University of Washington. He recovered some deleted sequences of COVID-19 from early in the pandemic, looked to be genetically similar to the bat coronaviruses that we've seen in the lab. And I mean, that's interesting.
How crazy is that? Yes, I saw that. It's like,
what's most interesting, though, is that the data was deleted by the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, from an agency database at the request of the Chinese researchers who entered it. Now, it is before everybody gets a hold of it, it is, according to the NIH, it is normal operating procedure that if somebody requests the data, whoever submitted the data, let's say I submitted something and I said, hey, why don't you delete that data? I actually don't think that's accurate anymore. If I request that it gets deleted, so the request of the provider is that it was deleted. Now, everybody's going to jump on it because of what it is, right? It's COVID, it's Chinese lab, it didn't come from a bat. So naturally, everybody's going to jump on it. And I think the interesting part, though, is that right now is when it's coming out. So that was a very interesting point there that I think is worth just kind of keeping in everybody's back pocket, right? Because we don't know exactly what's going on yet. We are in an area where we have a lot of data, we have a lot of individual points, but we don't know where the stars align. We're trying to draw something like a big dipper up there in the sky, and all we see is a bunch of random stars. So how do we get to see the origin and the outcome?
Yeah. Well, it seems like every week, week by week, we're discovering more and more, right? Like every week we say, Jason, you and me, we're like, I'm sure we'll be uncovering, more details about this as we go along. And we keep uncovering more details as we go along.
Yeah,
so this is just, I mean, we'll probably keep talking about this every week, so long as there's more details. And it seems like it's just kind of snowballing in.
Yeah, it's really overtaken our lives. I mean, it still has. And honestly, it's going to reverberate for generations. So, our grandkids are going to talk about this stuff. But I got two more data points, too, that were interesting. Recent study came out in MedRxiv is the name of the journal. Now, it was an observational study, so it's not the, what everybody loves is their double-blind, placebo-controlled study. But it did come out and said a combination of hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, and zinc could increase survival rates by almost 3 times for specific patients in COVID. So they used, I believe, ventilated patients, so the worst of the worst. So there's more data coming out. I think, honestly, every other week I see a study talking about hydroxychloroquine that's come out after that was suppressed for a year, which makes that very interesting. I don't know if any of your thoughts on that, Angel, but...
I mean, I don't know about the hydroxychloroquine. I mean, I think it's like no matter how efficient it is, it's probably going to be tainted by the fact that Donald Trump was the one that promoted it to begin with. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's become politicized, unfortunately. So even if it does work, it's not something that unfortunately, a lot of people are going to accept, right? Just like a lot of people on the right are vaccine hesitant. I think people on the left would be very hesitant on anything Donald Trump endorsed.
Yeah, and it's interesting because a lot of our viewers, they may be aware, organization called Project Veritas and James O'Keefe. He does a lot of undercover sort of work, putting in plants to try to get information out and using not actual whistleblowers, right? Because there's literal federal statutes on whistleblowers.
Right.
Government does a good job of getting around, but whistleblowers, right? So this one he used, Ivory Hecker out of Fox 26, I think it was, in Houston. No affiliation of Fox News, right? It's just a station. But she did say that her Fox News executives didn't like the fact that one of her stories talked about hydroxychloroquine use because, and her manager said very specifically, because of Donald Trump mentioned it, and it's always going to be politically tainted because of it, regardless of the outcome. and to steer clear of it, which is interesting that we live in that type of a society right now, because we shouldn't. We should be using the most scientifically beneficial procedure in a lot of these scenarios. And just think, right? Everybody's talking about COVID deaths, and we could have cut deaths like that by a third, or I'm sorry, 3 times. So, like, I'm my math skills right now, but 3 times is a lot, right? So if you have a recovery rate of, God, I don't even know, but it's just crazy to think about it, right? If your recovery rate's 70%, it would have been like, what, 90%? Like, you would have cut the deaths down by a ton. So, I mean, all this because of politics. You got to ask yourself, like, what's really true and what's really not? And why aren't we, to the people out there who love to say, like, follow the science, a lot of times they're not the ones following the science, right?
Right.
Once again, science has become political. And once we politicize science, there's really no, like, good, true, factual, like, North Star that we can align our knowledge on.
Okay, well, like you said, though, Jason, like, why don't they do the double-blind test that everyone tries?
So that's a good point. So a double-blind controlled study would mean that you have 2 groups. One of them, they all have COVID, right? So they're all verified to have COVID at an equal version. So in this case, all verified to have symptomatic COVID, and all get this within, let's say, 2 days of getting their symptoms. Okay, so they would get the same therapy day 2 after symptoms have arisen. Okay, and then half of them would get no therapy and they'd be given placebos. The other half would be given the cocktail. Okay, so the drugs all together. In a disease like COVID, it is really hard to try to tell somebody they're getting drugs to make them better, and they're really getting a sugar pill, and they're not. Imagine that. That is not considered socially acceptable. Most double-blind, like in a lot of double-blind studies, in this sort of situation, it's not political. It's not socially acceptable. My personal opinion is that I don't think you will ever see a double-blind controlled study on any existing medications in relationship to how they treat COVID, especially now since we have a vaccine or multiple vaccines, right? Because there's not even a need for it. But let's assume we didn't have the vaccines. I don't think we'd ever see one. All that we'd be doing, we'd be seeing drugs, and they'd study them to make sure that they're safe. And they would look at outcomes, and they would look at viral loads, and they would give it to everybody and look at decreases in viral loads and some other markers that they choose to. But I don't think you'll ever get one of those double-blind placebo-controlled studies. And honestly, when we needed that cocktail, the simple fact of the matter is there wasn't time to do it. So you're never going to get it, and there wasn't time to do it, and people politicized it, which caused people to die. So thanks, guys. Last point, which I think is very interesting, going back to last week, was we were talking about the Chinese vaccine.
Sinopharm, from Sinopharm, right?
Both of them, Sinopharm and Sinovac. We were talking about how they use those diplomatically with other nations.
Yeah.
And currently we have a few countries out there that are experiencing pretty bad COVID outbreaks, like worse COVID outbreaks than during like the mainline part of COVID a year ago. And these rates were done with the Chinese vaccine, which is very interesting. Experienced heavy outbreaks as vaccination reached their peak levels. Even in an unvaccinated population, this is really likely. Like when you think about it, right? Like, so these nations were Seychelles, the island nation in the Indian Ocean, the country of Chile in South Africa, Bahrain in the Middle East, and Mongolia, right north of China. 50 to 68% of the populations have been fully inoculated, so fully vaccinated, both shots, outpacing the United States. As a direct quote from the New York Times, all 4 ranked among the top 10 countries with the worst COVID outbreaks as recently as last week. And all 4 are mostly using shots made by Sinopharm and Sinovac.
Right. Not surprising.
Right. So I think that the theory was they were about 50% effective, right? Those vaccines. But to have outbreaks like that, and then whatever natural immunity you had before in the population, I'm not sure how they even work at 50%. I'm going to throw some shade at that because like I said, an outbreak occurring, even if it's 50% effective, we have not seen a strain of COVID that is that infectious and that, I'm going to use the word dangerous in terms of infectiousness. We have not seen a strain of COVID that infectious and that dangerous in that aspect that would cause that in a population with greater than 50% immunity.
Right.
Unless if people weren't actually immune and all it did was kind of sort of decrease their viral load. They say it's 50% effective, but how are they measuring it? Were the tests even good tests? I mean, that's another question, right? There's a lot of positives initially.
Right. Like Africa tested it and they said it was less than 50%. So, like
Africa's
you said,
done really well with the outbreak.
yeah, I was actually, I mean, just to leave our viewers off with this, you were talking about this last week, and the reason I forgot to mention, the reason why Africa has been so good with the outbreak is because of the whole Ebola thing that they had over there. So they have like this whole system where like they have like their sanitation down, like they have like wash their hands, they have like this whole system, kind of like how Taiwan had a whole system because the MERS and the SARS. So that's why they didn't get hit as hard with COVID as we did, because they were, doing like things that like we started doing in America after COVID hit. And I don't know if about you, for this past year, I didn't get sick once. So,
I recently just got sick, but I was with my nephew and he was coughing all over everyone. So, I'm going to actually give you something else with Africa. There was a study, and I read this a while ago. Somebody stated, and I don't know, I know it was a verified study. I'm not sure all the bounds of it, but it went along the lines of, hydroxychloroquine is they take chloroquine and they have a hydroxy put on the molecular structure, right? So it's the base of chloroquine. Chloroquine is used for malaria prophylaxis. So in Africa, they have a lot of malaria prophylaxis. So in theory, heavy use of chloroquine would prevent infection in some cases. Not all, but it would prevent it in some cases. So even by that, and that data was thrown out, honestly, early on during the pandemic, that was thrown out as being an effective rationale why Africa wasn't, because the continent really didn't get hit hard at all.
Right.
And then the funny thing, washing hands and all that, because this is an airborne virus, and that's important to remember. You do get it from washing hands, or you do get it from touching and everything, but it is also airborne. And these are countries that, much like a lot of the Asian cities, are on top of each other, right? People are living so close together. Whereas in America, we aren't quite as close together as a lot of places. Angel has a yard that is the envy of pretty much most of the world, right? As do I. We're not on top of each other. So
we're lucky that way.
Yeah, we're lucky, but that also means that we're able to isolate, and our spread is different from these areas that everybody's on top of each other. I mean, you have like 3 generations, 4 generations in a home. You have, one of our homes could have 4 different families in it in some parts of the world, right? And so, but the virus didn't spread in some of those areas. So that was an early on rationale. Maybe somebody will fact check it and say that was false. That's fine. I remember seeing the study, and hey, I'll take it back if it's false. But there was, and that data was out there for a while. So
yeah,
we'll see.
So we'll see.
It's an interesting thought.
Yeah, definitely. So everything like that we talked about this week yet again is a we'll see kind of thing. So we'll keep everyone posted as the weeks go on, because it's kind of getting exciting.
There's conjecture is fun.
Conjecture is fun. We have the UFOs. We have Donald Trump's potential prison time. We have COVID. We have the Wuhan lab leak. There's so many things going on. So we'll continue to monitor everything, right, Jason, and let our viewers know. And we'll see you guys. Unless, Jason, you have something else that you would like to tell our viewers for this week?
No, I think the news coming up in the next few weeks should be pretty good. I know that there's some talk about possible Donald Trump criminal trials. I know that the Arizona audit that they talk about in Maricopa County is coming, and they're supposed to get results in about a week, I think. There's a lot of stuff going on. So
right. And let's not forget Donald Trump thinks he's going to be reinstated as president, right? Next month or this month or something like that.
I haven't heard that. Although he did mention something about possibly in the fall, or he was very cryptic about sooner rather than later.
Yeah. So
interesting. I would keep an eye on what the Arizona State Legislature does.
Yeah.
An early preview of what that audit could mean. There's talk of the legislature possibly taking off until January of 2022. So I think that if you see them go into an extended recess like that, there's probably a little bit of fire because there's smoke. That's a lot of smoke right there, right? Because they would want to not release the results.
Right. Well, all of that's coming up in like a month or two. So we'll get all those answers and more right here on Second Gen's Liberated Panda. We hope you guys have a good week. Bye, guys.
Guys, bye.